Do want to switch here in New York City. Rick Perry is giving his own financial address on how he would fix a lot of the big old questions that surround our financial industry 5 years after Dodd-Frank. He is taking a rather populist tone here. Among some of the things he's saying is that our financial system has failed. Wall Street should not be let off the hook for bad behavior. Banks made a lot of mistakes regarding risk management leading up to the crisis. Goes on to say, paraphrasing here, that we have done little to address that. To Tim Pawlenty, former presidential candidate, governor in his own right, now with the Financial Services Roundtable. He's the big cheese there. What do you make of what he's saying, Governor, that this is something that Republicans and Democrats can agree on? The difference is the approach they take, that banks have overdone it and given fodder to their critics because they deserve it. What do you make of that?
Well, I think, Neil, if you look at what led to the crisis, of course, the banks and other financial institutions played a role in nearly cratering the American economy. So there's a lot of lessons learned from that and a lot of consequences that should come from that. Dodd-Frank was the effort to fix it. It hasn't been tested directionally. There needed to be more cushion, more caution, more oversight, more capital. But the question arises, did it really get the job done?
Well, obviously, what Governor Perry's saying, Governor, is that, and I'm quoting from his remarks here, some financiers intentionally misled investors and customers. They pushed people into deceptive financial products. He says this is wrong, but instead of them being punished, it was average Americans who paid a tremendous price. To be quite frank, he says, they were screwed. What do you make of that? That sounds like Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, well, let's also look at the role of Congress in advocating policies relating to housing and more affordable housing, by the way, on both sides of the aisle, that then pushed Fannie and Freddie to do things that were irresponsible and reckless, that then drifted down to banks and mortgage originators and lots of other people.
Yeah, that was weird how they were conveniently left out of this whole thing. And that was the percolator, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a complete reckless train wreck, Neil. So, of course, the American people suffered greatly, the economy suffered greatly, and somebody had to clean up the mess. Congress tried to do it, probably imperfectly. It needs to be improved, but at least they got a start on it with Dodd-Frank. You
know, Governor, I always think the government's heart is always in the right place when we start. I know that sounds like a very naive view, but I think it starts out in the right way. The idea of extending home ownership to millions more Americans so that they can get a home and get a stake in the American dream suddenly then morphed into, if you had a pulse, you got a mortgage. And that was dangerous. I think what Rick Perry is saying is, in retrospect, those bailouts of banks were bad, and we're setting ourselves up for more bailouts because he doesn't think banks are too big to fail anymore, that we're going to revisit this again. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that no bank or any other business should be too big to fail. No executive should be too big to jail. Everybody can agree on that, and nobody wanted to bail out the banks. Of course not. The question arose, though, if you didn't bail them out, would you push across or extend so much collateral damage to everyday Americans that you had to factor that into the equation? I think that's what policymakers did. But look, let's agree, no more too big to fail, no more bailouts, no more subsidies, no more too big to jail. And if you don't think Dodd-Frank did it, then what's your proposal? Let's see what he has to say in specifics. Going back to Glass-Steagall probably isn't realistic at this point. Moving banks into a traditional bankruptcy process may not work because, look, people might fly a bankrupt airline for a year, but are they going to have their money in a bankrupt bank for 2 or 3 years while the bankruptcy proceedings unfold? So it's more than just saying no more bailouts. Let's do the heavy lifting of saying, all right, then how do you do that? How do you accomplish that?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Governor, always a pleasure seeing you. Thank you very, very much.
Good to see you.